Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Steve Grumbine. I am with Real Progressives, and I have a great question from my friend Richard Carpenter, who asked a question that I think everybody should be asking themselves, though I don't think many people understand why this is so important. It's going to touch on a lot of things like Medicare for all in a state-based system versus a federal-based system, and it's going to talk specifically about how Andrew Gillum is very different than what you would have with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So let's start with that. Andrew asked the question, how can Andrew Gillum just use quote-unquote MMT, at a state level in Florida? Why would this be applicable to him? Probably the most important question that I've been asked without it being trolling. So I want to start with the difference between what a currency issuer is and a currency user, okay? So Richard's question is based on understanding that Florida is a currency user. It's not a currency issuer, meaning that Florida has to tax to spend. Or what Florida can also do is push for block grants from the federal government. Because what happens is this. The federal government oftentimes pushes unfunded mandates to the states. By pushing unfunded mandates to the states, it forces the states to tax and find revenue to be able to support these mandates from the Fed. There's absolutely no excuse that states should not understand this and that states should not be working governor to governor to ensure that no more federal unfunded mandates are handed down without a plan for how to pay for it coming directly from the federal government. So for people that don't understand this, let me say this one more time. The federal government is the currency issuer. All states, including big states like California and others, are currency users. So when I was asked by Richard, how would Andrew Gillum use the knowledge of MMT to be able to, in fact, advance the cause? Why would I put him out there and talk about MMT to somebody running in a state-based economy? It's very important. For my state of Pennsylvania, I'll use as an example, Pennsylvania is at about a $600 million budget shortfall. Think about this, $600 million annual shortfall. Much of that is tied up in pensions and other things, and they have to raise taxes in order to pay for the programs in the state. But so much of the state roadways, the school systems, you name it, are funded on official state taxpayer dollars. So you see places like Kansas that what they do is they cut the bottom out of the tax rate, they lure the businesses in, and then they cut the services. You see it happening in Texas as well, where they got so excited with Rick Perry, who went ahead and did everything he could to cut the taxes in the state, bring businesses in, and then they were stuck with a situation where they didn't have services for the poor. So I have long since been advocating, you'll have to excuse me, I've got trucks going up and down my road here. But in any event, I've been long since advocating that states should have federal block grants, that we should do away with all federal unfunded mandates because states are currency users. In order for us to have truly robust programs, truly robust environments, communities, we have to have federal spending. When we put it to the states are literally stuck with jacking up taxes. So my hope for Andrew Gillum will be that he will take the knowledge of this, that he will talk to other progressive governors around the country, that he will build a block of congressional governor power that could actually advance these things to force the federal government to help states out. Because what you see is, look at places where there once was industry, and then all of a sudden the businesses have left that area, and they've gone to the lowest tax area, leaving the people stuck in that area with nothing. Rust belts, you name it, complete and utter destitution, poverty. And the people that have money pick up and leave and follow the businesses. The people that don't have money are left in Flint, Michigan. They're stuck in Flint, Michigan, okay? They got bad water. They got all this stuff going on. And they are literally prisoners in an area that cannot serve their needs. So it's extremely important to understand the relationship between federal finance and state finances and why states cut the bottom out of their tax structure. You see how badly Kansas got screwed over. Look at how badly the folks in Kansas, especially the people that had the least ability to absorb the hit, look how bad Kansas is right now. The schools, the books, the computers, the everything destroyed. They don't have anything now. And this happens in the race to the bottom all over the country as states compete to bring business into their area. And they bring them in by giving them sweetheart tax deals, when tax is literally the only way that states can fund themselves, given that we are stupidly believing that a federal government that creates money from scratch is somehow or another broke. And therefore, we let the federal government cut spending, and then we end up making the states cut spending to go ahead and lure businesses in there. Do you see this? This is a horrible, horrible deal. So if Andrew Gillum goes down there in Florida and decides that he's going to raise taxes, what will unfortunately happen, and I'm trying to lay this out so you see how this exactly works, what you end up seeing is businesses flee the area. And then what happens is the federal government cuts spending. And now all of a sudden we leave people, we leave planet, we leave environmental crises, we leave freaking poverty, everything behind in our wake. And this is not because taxes are good or bad. We need taxes. Taxes are what drive our currency. But what we need to understand is that at a federal level, if our governors are banding together and fighting for no unfunded mandates, the states can compete with one another a lot more fairly so that businesses aren't fleeing from one to the other. And then people can choose, I want to live in a state where they have services, they have public services. And I would like very much for most of these services to be done at the federal level simply because of where the funding originates. If you try and do Medicare for all in California, for example, maybe California is that rare state that can afford Medicare for all. Maybe that one state could do it. But then what happens when you look at the other 49 states? Now what you've got is a situation with states that don't have the ability to do the same thing. And those states will go belly up. And then what will happen when we try and talk about, we need big programs, we need all this stuff, because people don't take the time to learn. They'll just instantly assume that socialism is bad, that big programs are bad, that government bankrupted the states, that these programs destroyed them. Look at the pensions. Couldn't we ask our federal government to assume all state pensions? Couldn't we? Could we not do that? By getting the federal government to assume state pensions, it takes a burden off of currency-using states, and it takes the burden off of the least able to pay. And it provides them with the ability to have robust economies. But so for folks like Andrew Gillum, who I hope to goodness get elected, bypass all the racism from DeSantis and everybody else that just doesn't understand this, I hope that he is able to win that race. And I am hopeful that when he does, that he takes that power and works with other governors and works with all the different members of Congress to advance the cause of understanding the difference between currency users and currency issuers. Because not all entities are the same. I'm going to tell you this until I turn blue, because I want you to know it so bad. Our candidates need to know it so bad. We as voters need to know it so bad. It's just plain truth. And once we understand this, we don't even have to have these debates anymore. Wouldn't that be wonderful to not have to debate the question of how are you going to pay for it? See, this is my problem with the Green Party. The Green Party has this thing about local economies. They really want to focus on local economies. But because they grok fail economics, they're terrible, they're abysmal at economics. Because they're so bad at economics, That means that they don't understand they're putting the burden on currency-using entities instead of focusing where the currency begins, which is the federal government, because they are steeped in myths and legends. Folks like Rodolfo Cortez get it. Now, I'm hoping that Bill Cimbrello was able to get his win up there in Massachusetts and others who understand MMT. Because without an understanding of this, you have good, well-meaning people that think that the states can do all these great things, but they don't understand that without knowing where the money begins, that this is why states and cities, the city that I live in, right near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, that city has gone bankrupt before. Think about all the different bankrupt cities and townships and so forth. Think about Puerto Rico. Consider Puerto Rico, my friends. Puerto Rico is a very, very tough situation. They're not a currency issuer, are they? So they're going to become a debt slave little territory where people are going to profiteer off of, just like any of these other scumbag states. Until we understand this, until folks like Andrew Gillum understand this and bring this to the national forefront. You know, Florida is going to be ground zero of environmental disasters. Ground zero. Florida is going to need help from the federal government. Wouldn't it be great if our Congress understood this? Wouldn't it be great if our governors understood this? Wouldn't it be great if we as voters understood this so we can help make things right? It's up to us to learn this stuff, and it's up to us to teach them. So remember, the moral of this story is that states are not currency issuers. They can go bankrupt. States all have a balanced budget amendment. I think there's only one state in the entire country that doesn't have a balanced budget amendment, and I for the life of me can't remember if it's Connecticut or it's somewhere up in the Northeast. One of them doesn't have a balanced budget amendment, but otherwise the rest of the states do. And so that means that they have to raise taxes. For every dollar they spend, they've got to find a way to pay for it. But the federal government doesn't have that problem. It creates money every time Congress, keystrokes it, every time Congress authorizes spending, money is created. Every time Congress issues a tax, money is destroyed. It works in a cycle. I'll say this over and over again until people start thinking about it. Congress spends money into existence. Congress taxes money out of existence. Spend it into existence, tax it out of existence. That's why we don't just keep printing more money, as some people say. Tax out, spend in. And to make the point first, since the federal government is the owner of the U.S. dollar, period, no matter whether it lends out its agency to banks or whether it lends out agency to the Fed or this or that, it doesn't matter. The federal government is the legal owner of its own unit of account, just like Japan, just like the UK, just like Canada, Australia, you name it. Stop with all the funny business. Just stay focused. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. States are currency users just like you and I, and they can go bankrupt. The federal government is a currency issuer, and it can never go broke on debt denominated in its own currency. So, Andrew, I wish you well. I hope you win. But let me tell you this, from one progressive to another. You've got to learn the power of the federal purse because your state is going to desperately need it as it is affected by climate change. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives, hoping you learned something today. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.